kicking off this video, I want to make it perfectly clear that I have no vendetta or ill will towards Prusa as a company or Joseph Prusa himself. There is some history here, and you'd think that I'd be filled with rage for all the unfairness that has been visited upon me by the sock puppets and Prusa fanboys, which has been encouraged in the back end by Joseph Prusa himself. In fact, he even left a twitty comment on one of my videos, which he's since deleted. Same with Joel Telling with the 3D Printer Nerd. He deleted his comments off my video as well because they're very antagonistic, and it made it clear that those guys are let's say not after my best interests. So they deleted their comments so that those don't get made too public. So yeah. Anyway, so despite all that, I'm doing my own thing here and I'm doing all right. And I just don't care anymore. But Prusa's got a new product out here, and I am a pundit here in the 3D printer space. And I feel it is a good thing for me to do to criticize this right now, as I see it, as they're releasing it, even before I have this printer in my hands. And I think I will try to get this one in my hands. If anybody wants to buy it for me, that would be amazing, because I kind of made up my mind to never buy a Prusa product, but hey, I might have to here. So Prusa, you might win. You might win on this one. You got my money finally. We'll see. Anyway, yeah, so with that disclaimer there, you got to know that I'm here to basically provide the pushback, because everybody's about to get on the hype train and talk about how great this thing is, and you're not going to hear anything bad about it. And the fact is, it's just another 3D printer, right? It's another Core XY 3D printer. We've got lots of those on the market, and there's a lot of things that look to be fantastic about it, but there's things that need to be said about this. So let's jump right into it. I woke up this morning to this video on Reddit, and apparently Joel Telling of the 3D Printer Nerd had actually posted this or something similar on Twitter, or I don't know, whatever. So yeah, this is Prusa's answer to the E3D tool changer. That's kind of interesting. Looks like they've got sort of a slide lock mechanism happening instead of the really cool sort of 3-point deal that E3D came out with. But here's something interesting to note. The bellows that are sliding up and down. So they've got a semi-enclosed chamber. I would call it more of a draft shield than an enclosed chamber, because once again, for the 100th time, let me put it to you this way. You have to have your chamber be enclosed, sealed, and insulated, right? Sealed and insulated. You can have a little bit of ingress and egress of air, just enough to sort of cycle the moisture out of the chamber. But this is just keeping the drafts off your print. And those drafts can be pretty bad, but it's not an actual heated chamber. So don't fall for the BS if they start calling this a 3D printer heated chamber. No, it's for sure not that. So I thought that was going to be the end of it. Surprise, surprise. We actually got an entire announcement of the whole printer here from Prusa themselves on their official YouTube channel. So let's watch this and talk about all the features as they come up. And I'm going to put my headphones on so I can hear what they're talking about. Okay, so we've got some LEDs. That's actually pretty nice, you guys. I don't mind that at all. More printers should have lighting that you can turn on and off, but this is just pure marketing here, just trying to get you excited. This is like a Home Depot commercial. that whole hard rock, kaboom, what are you building today? It's a 3D printer. It's not freaking Metallica. Oh, God. Okay, so that looks pretty good. The frame looks really nice and stalwart. I don't see any more 3D printed. Never mind. Look at those. We got the 3D printed end caps on all the corners. So it looks like every joint for this frame is actually a 3D printed plastic piece. And 3D printed plastic is not that stiff. So even though they've got 2020 extrusions in a lot of places, they're running this. Yeah, it's just too much. I mean, listen. You guys, we got to talk about this. Okay, Joseph Prusa, here, look at this. He's been written up in Forbes. So the Forbes 30, Prusa Research, I don't even, what's the Prusa 3D printer company even called? But it's a massive company, right? He did this whole Cribs, MTV Cribs, yo, check out my factory, like kind of thing. It was just so, I don't know, I guess he was trying to be cool instead of stodgy old businessman-y, but yeah, it was pretty ridiculous. So they've got this massive factory there in the Czech Republic. They've got a ton of employees. This is not a small company. They're making millions of dollars a month. Millions of dollars a month. And they're able to employ a lot of engineers from this Eastern European country where engineering talent is quite cheap. There's no excuse for using 3D printed parts, okay? Injection molding parts are so much faster to make, so much less expensive, okay? And they're so much more accurate, right? You can get a much better product from injection molded. 3D printing has its place. I love 3D printing. I have a whole channel here pretty much devoted to 3D printers, but there's a time and a place for 3D printing, and mass production of machines is not one of them. So the fact that it's like a marketing gimmick to put your 3D printed parts on your 3D printer. He's trying to sell others on a 3D printer farm, like so that you can make a bunch of parts in your own little farm because look, we're doing it here at the Prusa factory. So it's a sales tactic and it leads to an inferior product. How much inferior? I don't know. It looks like they've engineered these to all sort of sit where the grain, the X and Y direction are almost as strong as an injection molded part, but the Z direction is going to be a lot weaker. So most of these parts are going to be printed in a way that maximizes that strength, and it won't matter too much, but it's still going to be, I think, more expensive to use 3D printed parts than to use the superior strength injection molded parts. So I'm already disagreeing with the classic same old. Structural parts should not be made out of 3D printed plastic if you want that frame stiffness. At least it looks like they got away from the stupid zip ties holding like the most important motion system components to the frame. So that's a step in the right direction, but yeah. And the reason I'm talking about all the money that this company makes and all the engineers that they employ is because there's no reason why they can't afford injection molding machines. So the fact that they are using 3D printed parts has nothing to do with the fact that they're like bootstrapped. They are not bootstrapped. This is a very large, very successful company. So I hope nobody thinks or falls for some sort of BS that this is a startup company or that they're just scraping by and so they have to 3D print their stuff. It's just nothing could be further from the truth. They are extremely successful. So that's nice. They've got a massive build area, which is what I've been wanting, a Core XY machine with a massive build area. I made a whole video years ago talking about, what was it, the Tronci X5S. And the reason that I was a fan of that printer was pretty much singular, and that is the fact that it had that volume. I think they had a 500 by 500, so almost half a meter cubed. That's an awesome volume in Core XY. Why has it? That was like 3 years ago. Why has nobody else made it yet? I don't know, but at least Prusa is stepping up to the plate and making a large format Core XY 3D printer. Thank you, Prusa. Thank you for finally being the only company to do this. I've been screaming about this for a long time. But my apologies to anybody who actually ended up buying the Tronci X5S. In sort of talking up that printer for its time. It wasn't as bad as it looks now. If you go buy that printer now, it's just a big pile of garbage. But for its time, it wasn't as bad relative to all the other printers that you could buy. But it was never great. And the only reason I was really trumping it up was because it was a viable, large format Core XY printer, which we now have in the Prusa printer here. And hopefully, as usually is the case, the Chinese companies are going to follow suit, and we're going to start seeing a lot more Chinese large format 3D printers, Core XY machines, and that's a good thing. $360mm cubed, so 360 by 360 by 360. So that's like, well, that's not quite as big as I thought. So that's still smaller than my Tronci X5S from like 2018. And that's too bad. Okay, let's see this fully automated first layer. Okay, so they've got some sort of nozzle touch off deal, which is, oh God, we got to talk about this. Okay, so nozzle touch offs, I do love it in theory. And it's especially important for Delta style printers to have the automatic bed probe either mounted directly beneath the nozzle or to have the nozzle itself as that probe because of the way that Delta's, there's a whole big can of worms there with Delta printers, which is why you have to have that. It's absolutely not necessary on a Core XY or any other Cartesian style printer. So it's kind of a gimmick to be using it here. And I would still prefer a clicky switch. That's been, in my experience, the most reliable and most accurate. There's a couple of ways to do this nozzle touch off, one of which is piezo. So you got a little piezo sensor in there. And the better way to do it was first pioneered, I guess, by the, Duet 3D company. And that is to put on a circuit board, you print a load cell, basically like your digital scales have these load cells. And so if you print a bunch of wires on a PCB in sort of like a coil or a back and forth zigzag, then the resistance in that coil changes as it flexes, as it bends. And so the microelectronics can know based on the resistance when the nozzle has touched the bed. So I'm going to guess that that's the way Prusa is doing it. Although maybe not, because one of their competitors, as they see it, one of their competitors is Duet 3D. And so maybe they don't want to copy their competitor, but there's only so many ways to do this. And yeah, they can all be very accurate with one major problem. There's a major problem with using the nozzle as the bed leveling device. And that is the fact that if you try to level your bed with the nozzle cold, you can have some old hardened filament sort of protruding like a little bubble out of the orifice of the nozzle. Or you can have a whole big glob of that same filament built up on the tip of the nozzle. And it causes problems. So what if that globule is actually hot because you heated up the hot end? Well, now you've got a big sort of sponge, a big spring that's going to sort of have to squish out of the way, which will give a different reading, which will change just how effective the nozzle is at detecting the bed surface. So it's not as much of a home run as you think to be using the nozzle as the bed leveling apparatus. Oh yeah, look at there. It says it right there. Analog load cell sensor. So they're totally copying the load cell technique from Duet 3D. Okay, this is interesting. Let's talk about this. They're claiming that you'll never need to micro adjust. We call it baby steps, or what does Duet call it? Anyway, you're basically adjusting your print height mid-print, or you see that your first layer isn't going down quite like you wanted it to, and so you just adjust it a little bit closer or farther away. And they're saying you'll never need to do that. Well, never say never. I'll bet somebody will find a reason to use that functionality. So I hope that they haven't removed it from their interface, because it is good functionality to have, and to give your users all of the functionality and all of the tools that they could possibly use is always the winning strategy. But this is really interesting. They've got 16 independent heat zones. I like this. So there's two advantages here. First, is the fact that you don't need to heat the entire bed and waste all that electricity. If you're printing a small part here, you can just heat one little zone. I like that. The second thing that makes this really interesting is the fact that, beds expand. That's the dirty fact about 3D printer beds. So if you have like a very large bed, it's going to, like, as things get hot, they grow, they expand. And in the middle, where you have all the heat concentrated, not only because that's where sort of like the most windings of the bed heating element are, but also because the edges of the bed radiate more heat. So you're going to get more heat in the middle, which means more expansion is going to happen in the middle. And this becomes even more pronounced in large format printers, where the bed either convexes, where it sort of bubbles up in the middle, or it concaves, where it sort of dishes and it goes away from the nozzle in the middle. And this is a problem. This is definitely a problem on large format printers, which is why you can't get away from automatic bed leveling with a bed measuring probe with large format printers. You have to have it. You have to have it. But by splitting it into 16 different heat zones and 16 little plates, each of these plates themselves can move independently and do the expansion thing. So you're not going to get that singular concave or convex moment. You're going to have 16 little tiny ones. So the variance from your planar measurement is going to be more slight, and also there's going to be 16 of them. So the edges of all those beds should line up. This should actually be a nice solution, and that's reasonably clever. I wonder who came up with that one. So I would really love to know where that idea came from. I haven't seen that before. Seems pretty obvious now that you see it, but that's always the case with great ideas. So yeah, we'll never know from Prusa because they don't give credit to the source of their ideas. And it could be an engineer there at Prusa, and we'll never know. He'll be a nameless, faceless engineer. They'll never laud him as this is the genius who thought of the 16 independent zones. It'll always be attributed to Joseph Prusa, the genius. Yeah, there's more to it than that, but we'll leave it there. Yep, same. Yep. Okay, we got to talk about that. It looks like they've got an even larger piece of their, the flex plate that they use with the powder-coated PEI print surface. So that's pretty cool. But it was a debacle. It was the worst rollout that they had with their i3 Mark III with this same thing. And that was smaller pieces for their, what are they, 230 or something like that for their print surface for the Prusa i3 Mark III. So I'm hoping that they got their act together and they're not going to fail everybody. It was like a year that people had to wait or something crazy like that to get their good print surface. So nobody else is doing this. And still, I guess you might be able to get knockoffs from China, from Triangle Labs. Please, don't buy Triangle Labs. Don't even buy Prusa products. Even if you hate Prusa, don't even buy knockoff Prusa products from Triangle Labs. Buy Prusa, okay? Triangle Labs is evil. They straight up Control-C, Control-V your product, putting you out of business for doing all of the innovative work, okay? It's BS. And as much as I want to say that Prusa kind of doesn't innovate because he or they seem to get their ideas from the internet. They see what everybody else is working on and they just combine all of those elements. It's sort of like Prusa is the best curator in the 3D printer space, but he's not the innovator. So please don't buy Triangle Lab products, but I'm hoping that Prusa has their act together and they will be able to get these out to everybody. Okay, we got to talk about this. Oh, God. Okay, first of all, cycloidal gearboxes. 20-1. Oh, okay. A stepper motor has a lot of torque. More torque than a brushed motor, for instance. And the problem with a stepper motor is that it loses torque the faster it spins. So there's a crossover point there where speed is, you can gain speed to a certain point, but you're losing torque the whole time that you're gaining speed. So where's the crossover? Where does torque start to fall off and speed starts to go? I don't know the answer to that. Maybe Stefan at CNC Kitchen can run a bunch of engineering tests, because that's kind of thing that he does. I don't do the science anymore after getting burned by a certain company for doing a little science experiment and figuring out a problem. But yeah, so I don't know where that crossover point is, but I'm thinking 20-1 gear ratio is a little too fast to run a stepper, and you'd actually have more holding power from your stepper motor if you slowed it down. So why use a cycloidal gearbox? Well, he's claiming zero backlash is the reason to use a cycloidal gearbox, but it comes at the expense of a 20-1 gear ratio. Now you can get insane gear ratios from a cycloidal gearbox, but I think 20-1 is probably about the smallest gear ratio you could get, and that's probably why they're using it. So here's the thing. If you're going to run a cycloidal gearbox with a 20-1 gear ratio, why not just do Zesty here, right? They've got a 20-1 gear ratio with their worm drive, and they are microscopic. So they're getting the same torque and the same, with so much less weight. And it's not a 3D printed part. Whereas you look at the Prusa part here, and I think all of those pieces are 3D printed. Don't those look 3D printed to you guys? That's not good. Like, that's a lot of weight. I mean, yeah, I know it's a 3D printed part, but that's a lot of weight that you don't need to add when you can get that same gear ratio with a smaller and more lighter weight form factor. So to me, this just seems like a gimmick. And this is exactly what I'm talking about whenever I say, and this is always my criticism, that they don't come up with their ideas at Prusa. They just mine the internet for ideas. So this cycloidal gearbox, for anybody who's been in this space, in the sort of like mechanical hacker space on the internet, we all have been like fixated on cycloidal gearboxes for like the last 3 years. And I remember like 2 years ago when Joseph Prusa was being interviewed by Tom Sandlauderer, and he was mentioning cycloidal gearboxes and how excited he was. So I'm not surprised at all to see that they're using a cycloidal gearbox. This has been years in the making, but as cool as cycloidal gearboxes are, I think that their best use case is in the elbow joints or shoulder joints for robotic arms with massive amounts of leverage that need to sort of stick way out in space, and you really need that holding power and that torque. So the printer, the extruder, this is just way overkill. It's really not needed, and the overkill comes at the cost of a lot of weight. Look at all those bolts. What are there? There's 8 bolts there in the middle that you don't need. You can literally get away with this and get the same gearing. Okay, is it the same zero backlash? No, but the backlash is so small, especially at 20-1, that you're not going to notice. You literally cannot possibly tell the difference between this worm drive and the cycloidal drive. So this is just a gimmick to get you all excited, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the Bondtech LGX is a better extruder than that, having never had that in my hands. So we'll see. We'll see when I get that in my hands. The jury's still out, but my guess is this is a better extruder. Speaking of this, wait for it. No slip, large diameter drive gear. Huh. So, Prusa. You cheaters. I mean, I guess all's fair in love and war. But yeah. Where did you get the idea for having such a large hob gear on your extruder? Could it have come from the LGX here? Could it have come from Bondtech? And yeah, this is, until now, these were the largest. I mean, this is a dual fed. So you're getting that large gear on both sides. But yeah, watch my video coming out this Sunday to understand why large hob gear extruders are actually the future and why they are superior. But it's funny because Prusa only has a single-sided large hob gear, but it might actually give better grip because I see 2 bearings there. So we are getting the filaments being forced to sort of bend around the gear. So that's going to have a lot of grip. And I don't think that we're ever going to see filament grinding, where your hob gear literally carves away the filament to where the filament's no longer being fed. I don't think that the Prusa printer is going to have that problem at all, nor the LGX here. But yeah, that's interesting. Totally. They're once again, Prusa's mining their ideas from other companies or from hackers on the internet or whatever. So they're not the first to come up with it, but this does look like a very good solution. Next extruder. At least they didn't call it Prusa extruder. I'm surprised they didn't. Commonly used drive gear. They could have called it Bondtech drive gear, but they didn't want to give Bondtech the credit because they now see Bondtech as a threat and a competitor, and they are not about competitors. They are all about being the only one in the space. Nozzle jam detection with load cell sensor. That's kind of interesting. Actually, that's pretty interesting. So what they're talking about there is the fact that the load cell for the nozzle. So I was talking about that load cell which senses the bed, and there's a float between that. So the nozzle is floating on the load cell, and then there's the extruder. So there's a float. There's a difference between those. So if the nozzle is jammed and the extruder is trying to force filament through, it will cause the load cell to flex a little bit, which will spring an error there in their firmware. So I think that this is actually going to work. My prediction is this is going to be a really good feature. Okay, so this is that whole A3D swappable Hotend idea. Like, are they competing with everybody? Do they just hate everybody in this industry? Like, they're partners with E3D, who's provided the Hotend for their i3 Mark III. The printer that made Prusa the company to beat, right, was the i3 Mark III, and that features the E3D products. And so now they're going to make a very similar looking thing to E3D. Now, I don't know the politics of what's going on here. Could be E3D is making this part for Prusa. I don't know, but this is kind of ridiculous to be so close to E3D and so close to Bondtech, all in this same. So they basically combined E3D and Bondtech into this, and that's typically China's game, combining different companies' technologies. What I mean there is like the Dragon Hotend was just a amalgamation of Slice Engineering and E3D put together in some unholy combination there that shouldn't exist. All right. I mean, overkill. Yeah, that's overkill. Heat creep is a massive problem, but you'll know it when you have it. Your printer just won't be printing right. So to have your printer sort of pop an error because you're getting heat creep, well, what happens if you're getting heat creep? You're going to have to stop that print, go back to your slicer and reslice it, figure out what's going on, or your machine is just faulty. Like the mechanics of the machine are just wrong. So how is having this heat creep detection gonna do anybody any good? No matter what, you're gonna see the print going poorly and you're gonna reprint it. So if you're getting heat creep all the time, it means that the Prusa printer itself is actually a bad design. But if you're only getting it momentarily, it means that you're not running your fan, like your hot end cooling fan, correctly. So no, this is 100% a gimmick. There's no value in this. Okay, cool. Custom swappable 30, yeah, fine. Oh, okay. Let's talk about that though. The swappable 32-bit electronics. Why do you want them to be quick swappable? Are you thinking a lot of people are going to burn up these? I don't understand why they need to be quick swappable. Doesn't that just make it more expensive? Once again, they're competing with everybody. They're not cooperating with Duet, Bondtech, or E3D anymore. Instead, well, they never were cooperating with Duet, but instead they're just trying to chase everybody else out of the system and make their printer entirely in-house, which I guess that's how business goes. But if you are a fan of all the companies who provide the value and the innovations, then I don't see how supporting Prusa is helping the industry or the hobby overall. Okay, this is cool. You've got that representation on the screen of the model, and I just saw that in the last printer that I reviewed, which is, well, I'm almost done with that one, so that video is coming soon. But yeah, I love that feature. It has been missing on our 3D printers for years, to be able to see, instead of just a name, to be able to see the print that you want to do. Because sometimes I'll upload a file and I'll forget what I called it, and I'm looking through the names and I'm like, what is that one? And if I saw a picture of it, I know it immediately. But yeah, that's a great feature. Again, okay, so let's compete with everybody. Let's make our own in-house version of Octoprint. Okay, so let's swallow up the entire 3D printing industry into one company and call it Prusa. Let's make the whole of the 3D printing industry into one giant monument to a single man's ego. This is ridiculous. So rolling Octoprint into not cooperating with Octoprint, not saying Octoprint capable, or nope. Did they buy up Octoprint? Did they roll her project into their company? No, they just did it themselves and cut her out of the loop. But they're open source. They're the savior of open source. That's what Prusa is. If you support open source, support Prusa. Okay, international warranty and 24/7 support. There's always ways for companies to get out of their warranty. 24/7 support. This is the thing that separates Prusa from all the Chinese printers. If you are the type who can't figure out this type of stuff yourself and you want to be able to have a company to call and solve your problem, or to call them and yell at them, then yeah, please buy a Prusa. It's definitely the one to get for that support. Or alternately, a what is it? Ultimaker. They're a great company and they'll support you, and they don't spend all this money or have all this hype machine to try to make themselves look like the best company you've ever heard of on the internet. They just produce solid printers. So there are other options, but yeah, one good reason to buy Prusa is their support for people who buy their printers. So yeah, there's your optional add-on, that draft shield. Now, once again, let me make that clear. That is not an enclosed printer. That's a draft shield. Refundable deposit of $200. You guys, I only put $100 down for my $75,000 Cybertruck. I gave them $100 to Tesla for a $75,000 product, yet they want $200 for a machine that's going to cost like what, $1,000? Oh, maybe it's going to follow in the E3D's footsteps. Fine. Maybe it's a $5,000 machine. But still, okay. First of all, they're asking too much money, so they're clearly hurting for cash or something. Second of all, why are they needing to do pre-orders? This is like a Kickstarter, but they're cutting Kickstarter out of the loop. And so we all know the bad rap that Kickstarter has these days, because so many people got burned by Kickstarter projects. But at least there is some sort of accountability, because Kickstarter will do some stuff to make the products believable, or the projects that are going through their website believable. You have none of that with Prusa. None of that. They're doing their own crowdsourced Kickstarter campaign here. They want you to give them $200 now just for the privilege of buying their crowdsourced. Oh, I hate this. Okay. So all those companies, like, look at all the hate that Creality got for doing Kickstarter campaigns for their printers. Okay. Prusa deserves even more than that, because they're not even going to Kickstarter to get the reliability of Kickstarter as a brand behind them. So that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Joseph Prusa thinks that he's Steve Jobs. He thinks he's Steve Jobs. Oh my God. Oh. And the one more thing is, look, we're now competing with E3D in another way. We're also doing a tool changer. Okay, that's nice. That's nice. That's really good. That's not one more thing. That's two more things. That is quite good. So the ability to calibrate all sides of the nozzle, that's a trick from the CNC world. And I like how they're doing it. Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. I hope that we see that feature coming out on Duet. Although, unfortunately, Duet seems to not touch anything that Prusa does. So if Prusa does a feature, Duet just stays away from it and figures out the problem in some other way, solves the problem in some other way, because they just want to stay as far away from Prusa as they can. Prusa is poison to all the other companies, which is, I think, pretty self-evident here from this video. So I understand why Duet typically stays away, but I think in this case, Duet should sort of swallow their pride and implement that. But that's my first reaction on seeing this video. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I mean, this is what you'd expect from a tool changer. That's how it goes. And again, with the pre-orders, the cheating, you're a massive company. You don't need our money before you ship us a product. Here's how it works, Prusa. It's the classic age-old, thing with commerce. I give you money and you give me a product. There's no reason to do pre-orders. Let's talk about this one more time. So Joseph Prusa, he was featured in Forbes. What are the 30 under 30, the guys to watch, the richest people up and coming? He's from the Czech Republic. This whole company is from the Czech Republic. And if you watch this video on the Prusa YouTube channel, you'll see that there's three primary founders: Prusa, Joseph Prusa, his brother, Michael Prusa, and Andre Prusa. Now, Andre Prusa, I think he's the marketing department. Okay. So Prusa in the Czech Republic, a former member of the Soviet Union, the Eastern Bloc states. This is why I call the Czech Republic an Eastern European country, even though it's really like right in the middle of Europe. It's an Eastern European country because the mentality and the culture of that country is still very much tied into the cronyism and the sort of gangland warfare, propaganda, all those things, KGB, all those things that came along with the Soviet Union. So when this company thinks of marketing, they think of propaganda. Marketing and propaganda are the same thing to them. And sock puppets, that's how you do shills, sock puppets. Sock puppets are just modern day shills on the internet, and you don't have to hire separate people to be your shills. You can have a single shill with 100 accounts pretending to be 100 different people. So they've had in the past, pretty clearly, they've had a sock puppet farm going. And I think they've backed off on that a lot because sock puppet farms are prosecuted pretty heavily these days in Europe, from what I understand. Again, I'm an American. I've never even been to Europe, so I can't really speak authoritatively about that. But from the stuff that I've seen coming on the internet, from the news articles and all of that, so it's pretty clear that that's what they were doing. But that's basically illegal. Okay, so it's illegal what they're doing if they are doing sock puppet things. And that's a lot of the hate that's been brought to me is from their sock puppets. And I think it's that Andre guy. I think he's the one that's doing it. So we got an egotist, Prusa, and we got a wicked propagandist with his sock puppet farm, Andre. And that's what makes the Prusa machine. But they have a co-conspirator, as it were, here in the United States. And that would be the 3D printer nerd, right? He has been entwined with Prusa from the beginning. And the might of the 3D printer nerd, the fact that they would need your money in a crowdfunding campaign, like they're, oh, please, sir, may I have another? May I have some more? Like the begging. And they've got all the millions of dollars a month. They don't need your money for pre-orders. But they're going to get it because you're going to be excited enough to give it to them, right? Let's be honest. So why do I call Joseph Prusa the egotist? Well, I've been calling him this for a while. And they'll never acknowledge that they're responding to my little videos, my tiny little channel, 60,000 subscribers. They'll never acknowledge that I'm their biggest critic and that the stuff that I say has merit. But what was this, 2019? Yeah, I was being pretty vocal about how egotistical Joseph is and how he doesn't acknowledge that anybody helps him. He makes it seem like the entire company is him. And he's wearing his shirt right here. Look at everyone is a maker, only I am a 3D printer. Joseph Prusa. So he's literally telling you, the guy watching this video, he's telling you he's better than you. He's saying you're a maker, but I'm a 3D printer and I'm better than you. He's wearing his ego right there on his shirt and everybody just goes, oh yeah, cool. I like it. And they accept it. And he's not better than you. You guys, he's a college dropout. So if you have an engineering degree, you're better than him. He's a wannabe DJ. So if you actually make money as a musician, you're better than him. And all it was is right place, right time with a vision and getting some other capable people under him to, okay, he works hard. All entrepreneurs work hard, but there's also a large degree of luck, and he got lucky and made it through the valley of doom or whatever, where you're eating glass and staring into the abyss. He made it through that, so congratulations on that, Joseph. But you're an egotist. It's ridiculous. You did not earn your ego. And it was my favorite thing. This was the best moment ever on my channel was somebody said, do you really think that Joseph Prusa is the only engineer working at Prusa Research or whatever? And I'm like, no. Prusa is not an engineer. So of course he's not the only engineer, because hopefully he has actual engineers working for him, because he's not an engineer. So so he made a whole video here, which you guys can go watch, where he literally pretends to be the person doing everything, answering the phones, winding the filament by hand, driving all the cars. That's the joke. So instead of just actually acknowledging the people who help him and who make his company a great company, he pretended like he does every single job. If there's he thinks he's Steve Jobs at Apple, but he's actually more like Vladimir Putin. Don't you think? I think so. This one's funny. Can you guys see that website address? Prusa.com/team. I randomly typed that in one day because I was like, I wonder if he acknowledges the people that help him make these printers in any way. And this was a website. And the team here was just the graphic designer and the web programmer. There were like 3 people with their photos and their little bios, the quick little bios. They didn't have any of the like engineers who were making the printers or any of that stuff. So clearly whoever was making the website here put their team on this, and Prusa didn't want anybody else on there, and they hid this. You can't scrape this. Like I went looking for it in the Wayback Machine. It's sort of like a hidden thing from the bots. But when I went there was people there, and then I called it up in, I think in a comment. So one of those sock puppets, this is again how I know that they're sock puppets, because they go right back and they change things as soon as I respond to the sock puppets in comments, and they erased it. So they deleted it, and they just made it into a 404. Of course, after all my criticisms there in 2019, they did make this video where I think for about 30 seconds, they acknowledge a few of the other engineers who have made things happen. But I'll tell you what, this whole thing, my heavy-handed criticisms of Prusa started because I interviewed a guy named Shane, and I don't know if he still works at Prusa. I hope he does. I hope he still has a great job there. But I interviewed him instead of Joseph. Joseph gave me his email, and instead of responding to my email to him, he passed me off to Shane. Isn't that interesting? So Joseph wasn't there at the booth when I went back for the interview, and I had to leave the Maker Faire. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to interview Shane, see how Prusa deals with this, and also see if he can handle it to his ego. And clearly he couldn't, because he passed me off to Shane in the email. You deal with this guy. You interviewed him. Right. So that's just trite. And he's okay. So my open source video says, you don't understand open source, right? With my picture in the middle. And Joseph Prusa himself commented, you under open don't stand source, like that Walking Dead meme. And that was his twitty little response. So instead of addressing the points or the criticisms that I'm making in a debate or in an upstanding fashion, he's just here being a child, criticizing the thumbnail of my video. So he's not an upstanding person. He doesn't earn that ego in any way that I see. So final thoughts here. Am I going to buy this printer? Yeah, I might, you guys. I mean, I spent $3,000 on my, my E3D tool changer, and I'm just kind of getting around to it now that I'm in the new space. I'm just wasting time procrastinating, getting out there into the big shop. There's just so much work to do out there. So, it's always the way, right? You don't get to one thing until you're procrastinating another thing. So procrastinating that by getting to the tool changer. And it's a decent printer. I think the real Achilles heel of that is just the tension in the belts that it's needed for such a large printer causes ringing. And I don't see that the Prusa is going to be any different than that. It'll be interesting to see if they have some clever way of eliminating. They probably have some sort of input shaping, which I need to get working on the tool changer. Input shaping should eliminate a lot of that ringing as well. So yeah, there's fixes for all this. So anyway, yeah, it's more or less the tool changer capability is the real value there, and then the larger print volume. Although for larger prints, I've already got my the D4 by Mingda, that Mingda D4 that they no longer make. They must have made just a couple hundred of them. They sent me one of them. So when I actually do need to do a large print, I can use the D4. I have to print very slowly. That's a drawback. But on the other hand, I don't have to spend thousands of dollars to buy a printer, which is what I would have to do if I'm going to get this Prusa printer. So, I don't know, you guys. We should start a crowdfunding campaign for me. Get me one of these printers so that I can actually review it, and you guys will see a fair review. I'll even donate it to a school or something like that after I'm done reviewing it. I don't actually want it in my collection. I just want to see it so that I can run it through its paces and give it a good criticism. All right. Well, that'll do it for this video. I would acknowledge my Patreon supporters, but they probably don't want to be listed or tied to this video with the amount of hate that I'm about to receive from the Prusa camp. But yeah, thank you guys so much. You know who you are. And producers, executive producers, I think you guys do. So here's those guys. I mean, I'm honest here. I couldn't do this without the support of these guys. I wouldn't. I'd stop making videos. So thank you so much to the guys who actually understand what I'm doing here and keep supporting me. You guys mean the world to me. That'll do it for this one. Thanks for watching. See you next time.